She was embarrassed and kicked off the plane, humiliated in front of everyone. But just moments later, the very flight attendant who had treated her so poorly was about to face a twist no one saw coming. What happened next on this flight would not only change the lives of those on board, but it would shake the entire airline to its core. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you love stories like this, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Welcome to Ava Carter. It was an ordinary morning when Maya, a 28-year-old college student, boarded her flight to the Bahamas. After months of juggling classes, work, and life's daily grind, she had finally saved enough money to treat herself to a well-deserved vacation. Her excitement was palpable as she walked through the terminal, her heart lighter with every step toward the gate. She had carefully chosen a window seat, eager to enjoy the view and lose herself in a good book during the flight. As she settled into her seat, she gazed out the window at the airport tarmac, already daydreaming about the golden beaches and crystal-clear waters awaiting her. It felt like everything was falling into place. The plane was almost ready for departure, and with her seatbelt fastened and a warm cup of coffee in hand, Maya couldn't have felt more at peace. But as the plane's doors closed and the final boarding call was made, something strange happened. A sudden shift in the atmosphere made Maya's heart race. The flight attendant, a middle-aged woman named Karen, walked down the aisle with a purposeful stride. When she reached Maya's row, she stopped and looked directly at her with a stern expression. "Excuse me, miss," Karen said in a cold, almost robotic tone. "You need to get off the plane." Maya blinked in confusion. "Excuse me?" she asked, certain she hadn't heard correctly. Karen's expression didn't soften. "You've been asked to leave," she repeated, this time with more authority. "There's been an issue with your seating." Maya was taken aback. She hadn't done anything wrong. Her ticket was confirmed, she was sitting in her assigned seat, and there were no signs of any problems during boarding. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand. What issue? There's nothing wrong with my seat," Maya said, trying to keep her voice calm. Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. "It's a rule violation," she said vaguely, her tone clipped and dismissive. "You'll need to leave the plane immediately." Maya's confusion turned into frustration. "But what rule?" she pressed, her pulse beginning to race. Karen's face remained impassive. "I don't need to explain anything to you. You need to leave now." Maya stood up, still in disbelief, and gathered her things. The whispers around her grew louder as the other passengers started to murmur and stare. She could feel their eyes burning into her back, and her heart sank. Her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and frustration. Why was this happening to her? As Karen motioned for a security officer to come over, Maya's confusion turned to a deep sense of injustice. She had done nothing wrong, but in front of the entire plane she was being forced off the aircraft for reasons no one, including her, could understand. The officer, a large man in a uniform, simply nodded as he walked Maya toward the door. She was being escorted out of the plane like a criminal. A harsh reality began to sink in as the door shut behind her. Maya stood on the tarmac, alone, as the sounds of the plane's engines roared to life and the aircraft taxied down the runway. She watched, helpless, as the plane ascended into the sky without her. A mix of emotions overwhelmed her. Embarrassment, anger, confusion. Why was this happening? What had she done to deserve such treatment? The cold, dismissive way Karen had spoken to her, the lack of any clear explanation, it all left Maya feeling small and powerless. But as the plane disappeared into the clouds, something inside her shifted. This wasn't over. She had been wronged, and she wasn't going to let it slide. Maya wasn't sure what she would do yet, but one thing was certain. This would not be the last time she encountered Karen, or the airline. Maya sat in the terminal, her hands trembling as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. The flight had been the start of her long-awaited vacation, but now everything had been turned upside down. As she stared out at the planes taxiing down the runway, her mind raced. Why was she kicked off the plane? What had she done wrong? The questions kept swirling in her head, but no answers came. Her frustration bubbled to the surface as she replayed the encounter with the flight attendant. Karen's cold, dismissive attitude toward her had been so unjust, so unfair. Was this really happening? Maya felt a surge of anger at the thought of how she had been humiliated in front of so many people with no explanation. As the minutes ticked by, her frustration morphed into something else, an idea, a spark of determination. It was then that Maya remembered the airline's logo. She had seen it plastered all over the terminal as she walked to her gate, the same logo she had seen on the plane she had just been kicked off. This Airline. It wasn't the first time they'd been in the news. In fact, the company had recently been involved in multiple scandals, customer complaints about poor service, allegations of mistreatment, and most notably, accusations of racism. Maya couldn't help but wonder if she had just become another casualty in the airline's long line of controversies. But then, as her anger simmered, a thought crossed her mind. What if I could turn this around? What if instead of being the victim, she could do something to change the course of this airline's story? Her heart raced as she considered the possibility. What if she could own the airline? The more she thought about it, the more it made sense. This could be the opportunity she had been waiting for. She had just been wronged by the very airline she was thinking of taking to paradise. What if she could take control, change the way they treated people, and bring the company back from the brink of scandal? Could she do it? Could someone like her, a regular college student with no experience in business or aviation, actually buy an entire airline? Maya quickly pulled out her phone and started searching. Her fingers flew over the screen as she dug into the airline's history. It didn't take long before she stumbled upon some shocking revelations. The airline had been up for sale for months. They had been struggling financially and their reputation had taken a serious hit. There were very few buyers interested, and the board of directors was under pressure to find a solution before things got worse. The more Maya read, the more she realized this might actually be her chance. She was no expert in business, but she knew this could be fate. The universe had just handed her an opening, an opportunity to do something big, and not just for herself, but for everyone who had suffered under this airline's mistreatment. Her mind started racing with ideas. Could she raise enough money? Who would be willing to sell to her? Was it even possible for someone like her, a young, determined woman, to go from being kicked off a plane to owning the entire airline? With her mind set on her new goal, Maya dove deeper into her research. She looked up everything she could find about the airline's finances, who owned the majority of shares, and whether there was any chance she could secure the funding needed for such a massive purchase. Her heart beat faster with each new piece of information. She could see it now. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was going to take control. Maya knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was determined. If she could own this airline, she could change everything. The very company that had humiliated her could become the company that treated people with respect, something it desperately needed. And as she sat there, imagining the possibilities, a sense of resolve filled her. She wasn't going to let this injustice slide. She was going to make sure it never happened again. The journey had just begun. Maya had always been resourceful, and if there was one thing she knew about herself, it was that she never backed down from a challenge. The shock and frustration she felt from being kicked off the plane had ignited a fire within her. As she sat at her laptop, researching the airline's financial troubles and reading more about their desperate need for a buyer, she realized that she might just be able to pull this off. This wasn't just about revenge. It was an opportunity to change the entire company. She needed help, though. Maya didn't have the financial resources to buy an airline, not by a long shot, but she did know people, and she was determined to leverage every connection she had. One of her closest friends, Erica, had a cousin named Ryan who worked in finance at a major investment firm. Maya reached out to Erica, explaining her bold idea, and within a few hours she was on the phone with Ryan. Ryan listened to her idea with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Maya's passion was evident in her voice, and as she explained the situation, Ryan's tone shifted from disbelief to cautious intrigue. He confirmed that the airline was indeed in crisis. Its stock had plummeted, and they were facing numerous lawsuits over passenger treatment and poor service. The board was under intense pressure to sell the company as soon as possible, but to whom? Their eyes met. Ryan gave her some advice. Start small. He suggested contacting the airline's chief financial officer, CFO, directly and setting up a meeting. He told her that it would be a tough sell, especially given her age and lack of experience in business. But Maya wasn't deterred. She had nothing to lose. Maya, now more determined than ever, sent an email to the CFO, introducing herself as an interested buyer and requesting an urgent meeting. She knew she had to act quickly if she was going to have any chance of making this happen. The airline was struggling and time was ticking. She didn't expect an immediate response, but to her surprise, the CFO responded within a few hours, agreeing to meet with her the following day. The night before the meeting, Maya barely slept. She rehearsed what she would say over and over again. She didn't have a background in business, but she had done her research. She knew the airline's history, their financial situation, and the problems they faced. More importantly, she understood the human side of the equation. She wasn't just some investor looking to make a quick profit. She wanted to create an airline that treated passengers with dignity and respect, something the current management clearly lacked. The next morning, she walked into the corporate headquarters of the airline with her head held high. As she sat across from the CFO, a man in his mid-50s with a sharp suit and a skeptical look, Maya could feel the weight of the moment. He eyed her carefully, clearly wondering why someone so young with no formal business experience would want to buy an entire airline. Maya didn't wait for him to ask questions. She launched straight into her pitch. She spoke passionately about the airline's mistreatment of customers, about the scandals that had tarnished its reputation, and about how the company could turn things around if it put people first. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for sure. She cared more about this company than anyone else in the room. The CFO was silent for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he listened to her. He seemed skeptical, but intrigued by her sincerity. "You understand the stakes here, don't you?" he asked. "This is a huge risk, and you have no experience in this industry." Maya met his gaze, unwavering. "I may not have experience in aviation, but I have something more important. A vision. I know how to treat people right, and I'm willing to take the risks to make this company great again." There was a long pause. The CFO finally nodded, looking impressed by her conviction. "I can't promise anything, but you've certainly got my attention." To Maya's surprise, the CFO agreed to take her to the next step, an audience with the board of directors. It wasn't a done deal, but it was a significant victory. Maya's bold move had worked. She had earned a chance to present her case to the people who truly held the power. Maya left the meeting with a rush of excitement. She had taken the first step toward achieving the impossible. But she knew this was only the beginning. The real challenge was ahead, convincing the board of directors that a 28-year-old college student with no business background was the right person to turn their failing airline around. But Maya was ready. The fight wasn't over, and she was prepared to do whatever it took to win. Maya walked into the sleek, glass-walled corporate boardroom with a mixture of nerves and determination. As she stepped through the heavy wooden doors, the room fell silent for a moment. The board members, suits, ties, and the cold, calculated stares of older men and women with decades of experience barely glanced up from their paperwork. To them, she was just another young hopeful with a naive dream, someone they expected to brush aside. That she was out of her depth, and they knew it. But Maya wasn't like everyone else. She knew that this moment would define everything she had worked for, and she wasn't about to let their dismissive stares shake her. She was prepared for the battle ahead, and she had a plan. As she stood at the head of the table, waiting for them to acknowledge her, she could feel the weight of the room pressing in on her. They were all older, experienced, and most importantly, they believed they held all the power. But Maya had a secret weapon. She knew how to play her cards. She took a deep breath, then spoke, her voice cutting through the air with surprising strength. "Let's start by addressing the elephant in the room," she said, meeting each board member's gaze with unflinching confidence. "Your airline has a terrible reputation. I was a passenger on one of your flights, and I was kicked off for no reason. And I'm not the only one. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of passengers who've been mistreated by your staff, ignored by your customer service, and left stranded because of poor management. I've seen it firsthand, and I'm not going to let it slide." The room fell dead silent. Maya's words echoed in the space, and she could feel the heat of their discomfort. The board members shifted in their seats, and a few of them shot each other nervous glances. One of them, an older man with graying hair, cleared his throat and attempted to speak. "Mr. Carter, you're clearly upset, but we—" Maya raised a hand to cut him off, her eyes hard and unwavering. "No, I'm not just upset," she said sharply. "I'm disappointed. You've allowed this airline to fall into disarray. You've let your passengers down, and you've treated people like me, people who trusted you, as if we were disposable. And that ends now." The room was tense, the board members' expressions a mix of shock and defensiveness. They tried to argue, one after another, offering excuses and justifications. But Maya wasn't having it. She was relentless, each point she made cutting deeper into their carefully constructed walls. They could see it now. This wasn't a young woman with a pipe dream. This was someone who understood their failures better than they did. When they finally fell silent, Maya pressed forward with her game-changing move. "Here's the deal," she continued, leaning forward slightly, her voice steady but firm. "I know your airline is in crisis. I know you need to sell. And you're running out of options. So I'm offering you a chance you won't find anywhere else." A few of the board members exchanged uncertain glances. One of them, a sharp-looking woman with glasses, spoke up. "What exactly are you offering, Ms. Carter?" Maya's smile was slight, but confident. "I have access to the capital needed to purchase this airline, if you're willing to make a change. I'm not interested in just buying your company. I'm interested in saving it. But in order to do that, you need to agree to a complete overhaul of your operations and leadership." The room was still. This was the turning point. Maya continued, her voice gaining momentum. "I'll clean up your image. I'll put passengers first. I'll make sure your staff is properly trained, that your services are reliable, and that your leadership cares more about the people who fly with you than the bottom line. And I'll fire everyone who's been part of the problem." The board members sat back, stunned. They had expected to be negotiating terms with a novice, someone they could easily push around. But instead, they were staring at a young woman with a level of conviction and authority that none of them had anticipated. For several long moments, the room was filled with silence. Tension hung in the air as the board members whispered among themselves, weighing the risks and rewards. Maya's offer was bold, perhaps even reckless, but it was one they couldn't ignore. The stakes were high, and the airline's future hung in the balance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the chairman spoke. "Ms. Carter, this is a risky proposition," he said, his voice low and hesitant. "But we're out of options. We'll agree to your terms." Maya couldn't help but feel a rush of triumph, but she kept her composure. "Then it's a deal," she said, standing tall. "You'll see the changes you need to survive. And I'll make sure this airline is not only profitable but respected once again." The room erupted in murmurs, the board members stunned by the turn of events. Maya had just pulled off the ultimate twist. She had bought the airline. She left the boardroom. Her heart was pounding, but a sense of victory flooded her veins. Maya had done it. She had taken control of the very airline that had wronged her, and now she was going to make sure things would change for good. Just 7 minutes after being kicked off the plane, Maya was sitting in a plush office chair, her fingers trembling as they rested on the smooth surface of the boardroom's sleek conference table. The weight of what had just happened slowly sank in, and the enormity of her victory crashed down on her all at once. She had done it. She had gone from being humiliated and thrown off a plane to sitting in the CEO's chair of the very airline that had wronged her. She was in control now. Her heart was pounding with a mix of adrenaline and disbelief. But there was no time to waste. The battle had only just begun. Maya took a deep breath and stood up, walking to the front of the boardroom. She had made her point, but now it was time to send a clear message to everyone in the company. The old regime was over and change was coming. Starting now. Maya immediately contacted the airline's management team and instructed them to issue an urgent announcement to all employees. She wrote a powerful memo, making it crystal clear that things were about to change. It read, No one gets treated like I was, not on my watch. The culture of this company is shifting. We will treat all passengers and staff with respect, dignity, and fairness. This is a new era." Then, she turned her focus to the immediate personnel changes. The old CEO, the person responsible for the airline's mismanagement and culture of mistreatment, was fired on the spot. Maya didn't hesitate. She had no patience for those who had allowed the airline to fall into disarray. It was time to rebuild from the top down. As the old CEO was escorted out of the building, Maya felt a small surge of satisfaction. This was the first of many tough decisions she would make to ensure the company's turnaround. But the biggest change came with Karen, the flight attendant who had been the catalyst for Maya's entire journey. Maya had never forgotten the cold, dismissive way Karen had treated her, nor the humiliation she had faced in front of the other passengers. She wasn't going to let that slide either. Maya personally issued Karen's reprimand. The flight attendant was summoned to the office and informed that her actions had violated the airline's newly established standards for professionalism and customer care. Karen was immediately suspended, pending further investigation, her behavior now under scrutiny by the company's new management. Maya wasn't out for revenge. She was out for change. Karen's actions were a symptom of a much larger issue, but it was important that the airline's new direction was crystal clear to every single employee. No one was above the rules, and no one could treat passengers or colleagues with disrespect. With those immediate changes in place, Maya turned her attention to the next order of business, announcing her new role to the public. She knew this moment would define the rest of her tenure as CEO. She issued a public statement expressing her excitement and commitment to revitalize the airline. "Today marks a new chapter for this company," Maya said confidently in her address. "We are committed to rebuilding trust with our passengers and employees. From this day forward, customer satisfaction, respect, and fairness will be our guiding principles. No more mistreatment, no more excuses." Her statement went viral as people from all over the world took notice of the new CEO, a young woman with a bold vision and the courage to back it up. Maya's story of overcoming adversity to reclaim power spread like wildfire. The public was eager to see how she would bring about real change, and she was ready to show them. Later that day, Maya boarded a flight, not as a passenger, but as the new CEO of the airline. She sat in the first-class cabin, looking out the window at the clouds below, a slight smile playing on her lips. The sky she had fought so hard for was now hers to command. As the plane ascended into the sky, she realized this was just the beginning. The journey ahead would be challenging, but Maya was more than ready for it. She had reclaimed the skies, and now, under her leadership, the airline would soar to new heights. Maya's journey is a testament to the incredible power of resilience and determination. It's a story that proves that, no matter how unfair or impossible a situation may seem, there's always a way to turn things around with the right mindset. What started as a humiliating, seemingly unjust moment on a plane became the catalyst for an extraordinary transformation in Maya's life. This is a story of a young woman who not only refused to accept defeat, but used her intellect, determination, and drive to turn the tables in her favor. From the moment Maya was kicked off that plane, she could have let the embarrassment define her. She could have let the injustice take control of her emotions and retreat into frustration or anger, but instead she chose a different path. She saw the situation not as a setback, but as a challenge, one she was determined to conquer. Maya didn't just sit back and accept her fate. She made a conscious decision to take charge, to use the unfairness she experienced as fuel for something big. She realized that the airline's mismanagement and her own personal mistreatment were symptoms of a larger problem, a problem that, with the right strategy, could be addressed. Instead of giving in to her feelings of frustration, Maya turned her focus to the future. She researched, made connections, and worked tirelessly to learn everything she could about the airline industry. Her actions demonstrated that when you face adversity, the most important thing is to not just react, but to act with intention, to plot your course and pursue it relentlessly. And that's exactly what Maya did. Her journey didn't just showcase her intelligence and quick thinking, it also highlighted her courage. Many would have looked at the idea of purchasing an entire airline as impossible. Maya, however, saw an opportunity where others might have seen only a dead end. The obstacles were immense, and the people around her, both on the plane and within the business world, doubted her abilities. But Maya's resolve never wavered. She leveraged her resourcefulness and connections, turning the seemingly impossible into a very real and achievable goal. By the time she became the CEO of the airline that had wronged her, Maya had not only reclaimed her dignity, but had also taken control of her own narrative. She didn't allow one negative experience to define her. Instead, she used it to build something far more meaningful. A company that would prioritize respect and fairness. The fact that she was able to achieve such an extraordinary feat, going from being kicked off a plane to owning the very airline that had wronged her, is a powerful reminder that perseverance knows no bounds. Maya's story is about more than just revenge or payback. It's about transformation. It's about recognizing that even the most humiliating experiences can be turned into stepping stones toward success. Her journey shows us that it doesn't matter where you start from or how impossible the odds may seem. What truly matters is the willingness to rise above, to take control of your circumstances, and to push forward with relentless ambition. Through perseverance and grit, Maya proved that anything is possible. She didn't just fight for herself, she fought to create something better for others too. And in doing so, she not only changed her own life, but reshaped an entire company's future. Her victory is a shining example of the transformative power of determination. It's a story that reminds us all that no matter what life throws at us, we have the ability to change our fate. With the right mindset, a little courage, and a lot of persistence, we all have the potential to achieve the impossible. If Maya's story inspired you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales of resilience and success. And hey, have you ever faced a situation where you felt completely helpless? What would you do if you were in Maya's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, life might knock you down, but with a little creativity and a lot of determination, you can always rise higher than you ever imagined. See you next time.